Welcome to the Small Business Breakthrough Podcast, where every week we're interviewing small business owners that support the small business community. And when you're a small business owner, you have to stay focused on doing the things you're great at to continue to grow your business. But our guest today figured out a way to help you as the business owner inside the C suite, or at least create a maybe fractional C suite and get you moving forward on the things that you don't like because he likes to do them. I want to welcome Harry Mumma, founder of Executin, to the podcast. Harry, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Jason. Thanks for having me.
So I talked a little bit here in the intro that like in fractional C suites um, is what your specialty, but you really come from a very wide background that allows you to help small business owners. Let's just dive right in. Give us a little bit about that background.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. So you're right. I either have a very diverse background or I can't hold a job. But in my career, I've been a CFO for four or five PE portfolio companies. I was a CIO for a $700 million manufacturing company for 3 years. Chief audit executive for 15 years. I've helped redesign operations. I've helped build HR processes. So, really, what I do, my competitive advantages, Jason, is I bring multiple C suite fractional roles all into one. So, you don't need to go hire a fractional CFO, fractional COO, fractional CIO. I can help you with all of that, and my group can help you with all of that. And free the business owner up to do what they started the business for, to achieve the passion that they started their business for.
Yeah, and it's definitely a huge benefit to small business owners to be able to have such a powerhouse there because you get multiple fractional positions all wrapped into one with that amazing type of experience. What was the inspiration? What drove you to decide to go down this road of fractional services?
So I was a finance, accounting, and IT guy for 35 years, Jason, and really wasn't happy with it. Didn't fulfill me. It wasn't my passion. I hired a coach who encouraged me to dig deep. And about 10 years ago, I had an engagement where the CFO uh, referred to me as his GSD guy, get stuff done. And I was like, yeah, I've never wanted to be the CEO. I've always wanted to be the person that the CEO relied upon to get stuff done. I did Y2K implementation, I did Euro implementation, I did big system projects. That's really where I had fun. So I took some time, came up with, we're still working on the wording of what that chief strategic operations title is, but really wanted to help small business owners, founders, solopreneurs get their time back by not doing the things that don't fuel their passion and don't bring them revenue. Take that off their plate to really allow them to focus. And I call myself a chief time manufacturer, giving them their time back so that they can spend it again in their passion, but also in a work life balance with their family or doing something that fuels them.
Yeah, it's so important for a small business owner, especially those listening out there, that you, getting fractional CFO level services or CIO level services, chief information officer in your company is very important, especially when you don't like I should say if you don't like the numbers and you don't like the tech
Right.
because there's so much going on. Cybersecurity is a real issue and
Yes.
knowing your numbers, I talk a lot about that in my general content that I put out is and live streams. I've done a couple of live streams recently about the fact that knowing your numbers and the great thing about CFOs that I know of, at least, uh, there is they're really good at forecasting and looking into the future. And that's hard for a business owner because business owners like to be optimistic sometimes. And that's also a conflict. Do you see that happen with some of the business owners that you work with that when you're dealing with the forecasting CFO type work?
Oh, absolutely. My last client, for example, when I asked him before I came in, how do you know you had a good month, quarter, year? his simple answer was, "Do I have more cash in the bank than I had at the beginning of that time period?" And honestly, if you have a budget, and most small business owners don't, but if you do have a budget, you don't want to wait till the end of the month or the end of the quarter or the end of the year to realize if you've hit it. You want to do those weekly projections and make sure you're achieving them. And if not, to course adjust as soon as possible so that you are achieving them. One of my favorite quotes is from Lewis Carroll: "If you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there." What I try to do is help them if they don't have that strategic plan, that budget, those forecasts or projections. That's one of the first things we do. And then we do active monitoring to make sure that they meet or exceed all of those KPIs.
Yeah, it's so important to know a 1 degree of so as a from a flight example on a flight plan, 1 degree off over the course of 5,000 miles could run you into a mountain, and that those situations have happened in the past before we had technology, to help us, guide things, but that over the course of a year, a simple error early on and not paying attention to it is so important to be able to track and know. Um,
Yeah, real
talk
quick. And the analogy I used to use for that, Jason, is the first time I went to Paris. If anybody's ever been to Paris, they know that there's no street except for the Champs Elysees that's straight. And I was trying to walk from my hotel to the Eiffel Tower, but the streets all curve and they all go away. Well, if you don't keep your eye on the Eiffel Tower, you could end up over in Montmartre, not even close. Now, not everybody's been to Paris, so now I use the analogy of if you're a ship at sea and you're not looking directly at that lighthouse and not course correcting, you could get way off course and get into the rocky shoals before you know it. So it's important to know where you're going and important to always be monitoring your progress to get there.
Yeah, absolutely, and having a powerhouse like yourself inside of the, at the right hand of the business owner is definitely a success waiting to happen. Hey, real quick, did you know that most small businesses don't actually achieve their breakthrough? And it's not because you don't care. It's all because you're trying to do it alone. That's why I created the Momentum community, is to help you change that. I want to see you achieve the breakthrough that you've been waiting for. It's where we committed entrepreneurs come and get focused, get accountable, and finally build a business and life that you are meant for. If you want to learn more, click the link in the description below and enjoy the rest of the episode. You talked a little bit about some of your past clients, and I want to dive a little bit further into maybe some of the recent projects that you've been working on that has really energized you and said, "Yep, I know, you went through some transition 10 years ago, like, but now you're trying to you found the sweet spot and you've found some projects." What's maybe a project that you've recently worked on that has given you extra spark in the business?
Yeah, so I recently did some work with a fundraising training company. So they train not for profits how to raise funds, whether it's a capital campaign or just a quick fundraiser. Um, this gentleman had been running his business for 20 years. He wanted to withdraw himself from the business and create a new CEO, and eventually, within 5 years, exit the company. I went in and we did the first budget that this company had ever had in 20 years. We set up KPIs and started to measure against them. And what he realized was, they didn't have enough in the pipeline to sustain the growth. So immediately they were able to know, okay, we need more business development activities. And they quickly redesigned the business development activities and are forecasting for 2025 a 50% revenue increase over 2024. So, you know, my goal in any engagement is just to leave the client in a much better position than when I started. And I know I did that there. And that's exactly why I started Executed.
Yeah, that is a very great story to hear about how the successes have continued to play out. Uh, looking at the industry, looking at how we're positioned as coaches and consultants, is what do you see the future of the industry doing in the next 3 to 5 years?
Um, Jason, I think there's going to be a lot more solopreneurs. Every time I'm talking to people and there's a significant reduction, people are um, leaving what they're doing. The great resignation that happened in 2020, I think really kicked this off, where the younger generation said, you know what, I don't have to work 60 hours to support the style of living that I want. I think people are going to start getting in touch with their passions and starting things that support their passion. And when they do that, their tendency is to dive into the business and become the business, and the business becomes them. What I'm really trying to do is I'm trying to pull them back and say, don't be an employee of your business, be an owner of your business. Don't work in your business, work on your business. And so, what I'm doing, and what I did with this prior client that I mentioned, is we actually developed an investment plan of where they were going to invest in other people and other technologies to allow them to set the strategic direction and make sure the health of their employees was strong and not out there servicing their clients. They're letting somebody else do that.
Yeah, it's a great point on how to set the company up for success and allow them to be able to look into the future and stay focused on looking into the future because as business owners, especially ones that started their own business, it's so easy to get pulled right back into day-to-day operations. And I know I've done it myself in the past
We
and
all have.
you're focused on the future, you're working there, and then all of a sudden some problem comes up and you just get sucked right back in. And having great people around you is helps prevent that so that you can stay working on the business because you're right. You don't want to buy yourself a job, especially if you're looking at whether it's an acquisition or something else. Um, the
You brought up a great point there, Jason, in that something always goes wrong. So one of the things I do, and the reason I call myself a chief time manufacturer, is I try to set the business owner up for a 30 to 35-hour task week. I prefer 30, but a lot of business owners prefer 35. And the reason I do that is something invariably goes wrong. Inevitably, it goes wrong. And if you set yourself up for 45 or 50 hours a week, then if you have a 10-hour setback, now you're at 60 hours a week, and now you've lost your week. Whereas if you're at 30 or 35, you're still at 40 or 45. And I actually had one business owner that I was working with on this. She said to me, she goes, well, what happens if nothing goes wrong? And I said, well, Kate, you've got two kids. Wouldn't you like to spend time with them or maybe go out to dinner or have wine with your girlfriends or and she looked at me and she said, I never even considered that. And so, I think, you said that people get sucked in. I did that in 2022. I was working 90-hour weeks. I had a bunch of health issues. Gee, you think you're going to have health issues when you're working 90-hour weeks? And I would like to uh, help the younger generation and help new business owners avoid the pitfalls that I've had myself. So
Yeah, absolutely, because that's it having the structure and then all of that adds the anxiety, and the anxiety brings on the health problems, and you're into this exponential just stacking of events that is so really simple when you think about it, is set your I love that phrasing of setting your week up for 35 hours, and then if everything goes great, yeah, have some extra time for yourself.
yeah.
Business owners that are listening out there, hear what we're saying. It is okay to have time to yourself. Like,
I would say it's almost mandatory. One of the things I did, Jason, when I started Executen is I schedule an hour to an hour and a half, and if I can stretch that, to take my dog for a walk every day. And it's in the middle of the day, so that if I'm having a tough morning, that breaks up my morning. If I'm having a great morning, that I'm in a great mood when I take my dog out. And people say, well, how can you do that? Well, you have to set yourself up. And if you don't schedule it, you won't do it.
Yep.
So one of the things I do after I get them to a 30-hour task week is I build their perfect week. When are you going to work on clients? When are you going to work on yourself? And there has to be time for working on yourself, or else why are you doing it?
Absolutely. That is a great spot to wrap up as we start to progress into the next phase of our podcast here. But Harry, it has been such a fantastic conversation, and there's so much gold in here for the business owners out there. But you ready to jump into our lightning round?
I am, Jason. I am.
Okay. The quick hitting questions here. So, coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Cats or dogs?
Well, I mentioned I walk my dog, so definitely dogs. Plus, I'm deathly allergic to cats. So
Well, yeah, so let's keep the cats out of the house. That definitely works. If you could grab only one weapon or item during a zombie apocalypse, what would it be?
I'm going to go with a flamethrower so that I can take out as many of them and reduce them to ashes.
Ah, there you go. I love it. It's got to be probably a first on the show. So, uh, favorite quote or phrase that you think about often?
So I mentioned before that if you don't know where you're going, the other one that as a perfectionist is don't let perfection be the enemy of good. So many people who start their own business are such high performers and have been told, you're great at this, you're great at this, or in high school or in college, they were great athletes and they were told, if you think about after a game, the first thing you're told is what you did wrong. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of good. So that'd be my quote.
Excellent. How about a book that has influenced your life the most?
So I mentioned like I switched careers, and it was what color is your parachute in the flower exercise. If you're in a job that you don't like or you're not passionate about every day, read that book, do that exercise. It will change your life.
What color is your parachute? We'll try to link that in the show notes. Sounds like a great book. How about the biggest obstacle that you have overcome and one lesson that you have learned from it?
So the biggest obstacle was leaving finance and accounting after being in it for 35 years and being very successful. And I was making good money with it. Getting the courage to walk away from that um, was daunting. And the lesson I learned from it is you really can do something that makes you happy. I no longer dread getting up for work. Now, there are good days and bad days, Jason, but the good outweigh the bad, and that hasn't happened in a long time. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, and I want to tack on to that just a tad is the point of there always, no matter where you come, we are humans and we live in a world of humans. So there's going to be good days and there's going to be not good days. And it's how you set your mind in the morning, it's how you take care of yourself that you approach those not good days as well. It's just an opportunity to learn some lessons and be better. It's something I know I've been focused on heavy in this, especially this week that we've done. This episode won't air toward till later, but the we're recording in March right now, and the definitely something that I've been working on to keep that positive mindset forward and like let things roll because it's not the end of the world in most cases.
Yeah.
There are some obviously caveats to that. Harry, again, it has been a great conversation. How can our listeners reach out if they want to learn more or collaborate with you?
So on LinkedIn, I'm Harry Mumma. You have the spelling there, and www.executend, executend is in David.com.
That's great. So we've got all of that information will be in the show notes or the description if you are watching it on YouTube. Harry, again, thank you so much for being on the podcast. There are some pretty big golden nuggets inside of this podcast, and I encourage you go back, re-listen to it, listen to why work, not necessarily just the conversation of work-life balance, but why it's important to be working on your business, why it is important that you take time for yourself through the day because that hour that you block out where you go walk the dog, you go to the gym, you work on you, not your business, not anything else, you work on you, could be what's holding you back from achieving the next level today? I know I've had those experiences, and it sounds like Harry has had those too. If you found value in this podcast, leave us a comment and check out the playlist right here for other episodes. Until next time.